We have only 30 days to go until Inauguration Day, and trying to pave the way to a smooth transition, Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani met with Mayor Eric Adams at Gracie Mansion earlier today. It marks the first meeting between the two former rivals since Mamdani's victory last month. Here to talk about the meetings, the transition, and much more is Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to be back.
So you had this meeting. Was this your first time speaking with Eric Adams since Election Day?
Since the Election Day, this is the first time meeting him in person. We'd spoken on the phone, but this was just meeting in person, myself, my chief of staff, my first deputy mayor, and the same for himself, his chief of staff, his first deputy mayor. And it was for a little more than an hour, and it focused on the importance of a smooth transition for New Yorkers.
How is the transition going?
It's going well, and I have to say that I appreciate the fact that Mayor Adams has made his team available for hours as we negotiate both the logistical aspects of a transition and also ensuring that from December 31st to January 1st, that New Yorkers can expect the same city services being delivered no matter who the mayor is.
Have you talked with other mayors, former mayors? I'm thinking of Bill de Blasio. I think we've seen you with him, but Mike Bloomberg, Rudy Giuliani?
I haven't spoken to Rudy Giuliani, but I did speak to former Mayor Mike Bloomberg during the general election, and that was a conversation where we spoke just as much about management as about increasing parkland space and also about the formation and the structure of the bullpen in City Hall itself.
And they all have very different styles, but is there a sort of a through line? Does any of it sort of track? Are they all kind of getting you ready for the same job?
Well, I think it is all getting me ready for the same job. It's also introducing me to the different styles that each mayor has actually taken. And the thing that comes back to it, no matter who I'm speaking to, is the importance of a good team around you. And I have already made the first two appointments of our transition in my chief of staff and my first deputy mayor. And to me, it's an example of the kind of team that we're going to build, the mixture of a fluency with the internal workings of city government and the imagination and the ambition necessary to transform that city government to serve working class New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs.
How deep do you plan to get into sort of personnel decisions? Mayor Eric Adams was famous for, putting people pretty far down in the bureaucracy. He had a very clear vision of where he wanted every person to end up.
I don't think it's going to get to that depth, but it is going to be to the level of picking the people who will be leading our agencies, our commissioners, our directors, and then empowering them to actually do their jobs. Because oftentimes you see that if you are micromanaging someone, you will never actually let them do the work that they were hired to do. You have to hire a team and then trust that team to actually get to work.
Your meeting was at Gracie Mansion today. Are you any closer to making a decision about whether you're going to live there?
Now you sound like my landlord. No, not yet at a decision point, but I did appreciate having it at Gracie, and I've been there a few times visiting both Mayor Adams but also Mayor de Blasio, and this was a meeting where we had in the dining room, the six of us.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's almost not a choice, right? I mean, the amount of security, you travel with a security detail now, what you would have to do just to go to the corner to get a loaf of bread in your current neighborhood is going to be just something you don't necessarily want to put everybody through all the time. Right?
Going to Duane Reade on the corner is a different experience now.
Yeah. Are you going to hold a traditional inauguration on the steps of City Hall?
So we are in the process of finalizing the location, the timing of the inauguration, but I'm very excited to have it be an inauguration where we bring New Yorkers into it. It's not just one that they can watch on TV, but how to actually ensure they can be a part of it.
Either on that day or shortly after that, something that's going to end up on your desk is a call from the city council to raise their salary, saying that they haven't had a raise in something like 10 years or something like that. Generally, we'll put that aside. Maybe they'll give you legislation soon, maybe not. I suspect it'll be there on the first day. But what generally do you think about the council's salary, the mayor's salary? Is it in line with where you think it should be?
I can tell you, Errol, that my focus has more been on the salaries of working people across the 5 boroughs and how we can ensure that those are salaries where they can afford to live in this city. I will, of course, consider anything that the council does. I look forward to working with the council. My focus from now until January 1st and then beyond is on working New Yorkers and delivering for them.
You think you can make it on the mayor's salary?
I think I'll be okay.
Okay, good. The New York Times has an article about the fact that the city's public schools are deeply racially segregated and have been for a long, long time. This comes at the same time as the Trump is taking steps to sort of unravel attempts at diversity. What's your sense of what you're going to do and when you're going to do it as far as taking steps in that direction?
This is a long-standing issue in our city. We have the most segregated school system in the United States of America. And it's a system where we are not only seeing that as a crisis, but also the fact that now for the 9th consecutive year, more than 100,000 of our students are homeless. I think we have reached 140,000 by last count. And so there are a number of proposals that have been put forward. I think a few of them, especially from the School Diversity Advisory Group in the previous administration, start to get to the heart of how we can resolve this, because what we have to ensure is that every single child in our city is receiving an excellent public school education. And one of the things that we've put forward as a set of proposal is how to hire more teachers so that we can fulfill the class size mandate. And we've put together a proposal of the course that would take someone from the community to the classroom.
Whoops.
Sorry about that.
Keep going.
No use crying over spilled water, as they say. And it is something that would hire 1,000 additional teachers on an annual basis. And this would be something that would assist New Yorkers who are currently in high school in subsidizing their tuition so long as they become a teacher for a set number of years, as well as New Yorkers who are looking to transfer their careers in adulthood to becoming a teacher. We need all of these New Yorkers and more to actually be in our classrooms.
Well, but the diversity question is in some ways different, right? It's not just a resource question. There were people who were saying, we have these resources, we just don't necessarily want admissions to happen in such a way that we don't control it, right? So that there are various gates and people are steered away from certain schools, or there's a G&T test, or there's a test that you can prep for, meaning you can sort of buy your way into certain kind of learning situations.
And I think that the key of this is we have to bring to an end the stories I've heard from many parents who tell me that they live exactly where they do in New York City so they can access a high quality public school education. We have to make sure that no matter where you live, you are going to get that high level of education. And that's going to be the mandate for our work.
Have you heard any recommendations about personnel or policy from the 17 different committees that are working on your transition?
So today was actually the first committee meeting of youth and education. I look forward to being in close touch with the co-chairs of our transition as we get those policy and personnel recommendations. We have 16 other committees that will be meeting. And what so excites me about this is that these are New Yorkers who have a combination of both being at the forefront of when government has worked and the forefront of when community has had to step up because government has failed.
What's your sense of Chancellor Ramos? Have you met with her?
I've met with Chancellor Ramos. I've appreciated the work that she's done. And like everyone within the Adams administration, I'll assess her and everyone else on the basis of the work they've done, not on that fact of who appointed them.
Right. So it's possible she might stay? A lot of parents
it's possible for her. It's possible, frankly, for anyone who's working the admin, because what we're going to bring is a lens to excellence, not a lens to who they know.
We are a couple of weeks removed from that meeting that you had with President Trump, that remarkable meeting. Have you had any follow-up conversations with the White House since then?
I've spoken briefly with the president since then, and I've always kept it a conversation that's focused on the welfare of New Yorkers and the fact that New Yorkers are still struggling under a cost of living crisis. Even though it's been a few years since it was the focus of national headlines, it continues to be a focus for New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs.
When you spoke with him, was it about sort of ICE matters? Was it about things that, we're all wondering what's going to happen from the White House?
The conversation that we had was prior to the recent raid, the attempted raid that we saw at Canal Street. And it was a conversation where I both communicated my condolences about the multiple National Guardsmen who were attacked and the one who then later lost their life to that horrific attack, and the focus on what we can actually do to build more housing here in New York City and the importance of serving New Yorkers' greatest need in what is pricing them out, which is the cost of housing.
Yeah, his eyes really seem to light up about that, and that is probably a good sign. Let me ask you some more about the ICE raids.
Please.
They arrested a number of people who were trying to block ICE from going out and actually enacting a raid. What's going to happen after January 1st when the NYPD is your NYPD? Are they going to continue to, say, clear the streets and help ICE do their work?
I think we're going to make it very clear that the NYPD is not assisting ICE in their actions. And I've said, even directly to the president, frankly, that these raids are cruel and inhumane, and they do nothing to actually serve the interests of public safety. And while so much of the focus has been on the attempted raid at Canal Street, we know that ICE's actions extend far beyond that in New York City. Recently, a father and his 6-year-old son were detained. His son went to an elementary school in my district in Astoria, Wansheen. and we still do not know where they are. And this has been part of the transformation of sites that used to be areas of routine immigration check-in, like 26 Federal Plaza, making them instead places where families are detained and deported even when a child is as young as 6 years old.
In a case like that, are you in a position to sort of contact the White House and just ask to cut through the bureaucracy and fix that particular case?
I will always make the case directly. And the fact of the matter is we deserve a mayor who understands their responsibility is to every person who calls the city home, and that includes the more than 3 million immigrant New Yorkers who do so. And I look forward to being that mayor.
On a different topic, Governor Hochul drew the wrath of some environmentalists and some residents over this proposed underwater gas pipeline that would go out near Staten Island and out to the Rockaways. Do you plan to weigh in on that?
Look,
I think you're on the record as opposing it.
I'm on the record as opposing any new fossil fuel construction, and it's part of a commitment to taking on the climate crisis.
And in a case like that, I mean, there's litigation, there's people who are really going to be taking sides. So as mayor, your voice will really carry pretty far in that conversation. Do you plan to be part of that conversation?
I think I'll always make my thoughts clear as I have done now and will continue to do so. And I also look forward to the working relationship that I have with the governor, which is one that has been focused on the affordability crisis and how to deliver for New Yorkers.
Has that been part of the conversation?
Not as yet. No, the focus has been more on universal child care and the affordability agenda that I ran on.
Later in tonight's show, I'm going to be talking with the author of a report about the looming federal cuts that are going to harm and even cripple a lot of nonprofit organizations, some of which provide really vital services. Along the way, though, the report notes that the city currently owes more than $1 billion in unpaid invoices going back to 2022 to various nonprofits here in the city. Is clearing that backlog going to be a priority for you?
Absolutely. And I think that if we want to be honest about our criticisms of other levels of government, we also have to own up to what city government can and should have been doing for a long time. And this report of estimating more than $1 billion in backlog payments, in some ways it is news, in other ways it's a continuation of a long-running story. And it's time for us to actually take this seriously, because oftentimes these are the nonprofits on the front lines of doing the most critical work in this city, and we are making that work more difficult by virtue of a lack of importance being placed on prompt payments.
The transition committees that you have, which is hundreds of people, they're looking at tens of thousands of resumes.
70,000 now.
Realistically, they're not going to necessarily look, sort of at each piece of paper or each, digital resume that's been submitted. What's the criteria going to be, though? What kind of criteria are they using to try and winnow it down to something manageable?
So we're actually already using the portal in search of specific sets of applicants who have checked off parts of their own experience or their own interests. And it will continue to be used not only by these 17 committees, the more than 400 New Yorkers who are on them, but also extending into the early months of the administration. And the key part here is we have to demystify government in all of its work. We have to ensure that how you get a job in city government is based on the work that you have done, that you could do, not on who you know. One of the best hiring decisions I ever made was hiring my then and now Chief of Staff, L. Bisgard Church, when I won my assembly race, and I did so through an open application process. We didn't know each other beforehand. I saw her application, I interviewed her, and I was so impressed that I made one of the best decisions I ever have, which is now someone who continues to be a partner in the work of delivering for New Yorkers.
Nobody steered her to you, or vice versa?
No.
Oh, very interesting. On the subject of protest, you said that you hope to rally with workers like the Starbucks employees that you were standing with the other day. What happens, though, when it's city workers who are picketing you for better pay or working conditions?
Well, then that means I've already had an opportunity to meet with them, because so often what we see is that a picket is the result of a failure to take a negotiation seriously. And those Starbucks workers who are outside their store, it wasn't the first time they were making their demands clear to management. It was after months of a lack of interest. And I think the core issue here, we're talking about a CEO, Brian Niccol, who made $96 million for 4 months of work last year. The ratio between his income and that of a barista is 6,666. And still, they will not give regular and predictable schedules to their Starbucks workers, to the extent that DCWP just won a settlement of close to $30 million because of Starbucks violating so many city laws.
You'll be in a position to not just wait online, but to sort of call as the mayor of New York and make these kind of considerations known, right?
And I look forward to doing so, to make it very clear that here in New York City, we stand with workers' fights for the basic dignity.
Last question. Penn Station is set to undergo a massive transformation. Do you support any of the plans on the table? Do you think that maybe Madison Square Garden should be moved?
I have to be honest with you, I'm not as familiar with the specifics of the different plans, but that is one example of what I'm going to get familiar with over these next 30 days.
Okay, we'll let you get back to it. Thanks so much for coming by. Great talking with you.
Pleasure.